from her in 25 years for this long.
He said 5 words. 5 ordinary words, spoken in a quiet voice in a chair in front of a camera. And to most people watching, those 5 words sounded like a grieving man at the end of his rope. But one person watching that interview did not hear grief. She heard something else entirely. Something that, in her 2 decades of reading the people no one else could read, she has learned to recognize the moment it appears. Brian Hooker did not know she was watching. He does now. What she found in his own words, not in rumors, not in speculation, but in the exact sentences that came out of his own mouth, is the kind of thing that cannot be walked back. And before this video ends, you are going to hear it for yourself, and you will not be able to unhear it. Her name was Lynette Hooker. She was 55 years old. She was a mother, a sailor, a woman who had given up a career, sold a house, and stepped aboard a boat named Soulmate to build a life on open water with the man she had been married to for 25 years. She documented everything: the calm mornings, the sudden storms, the meals cooked in tight quarters, the life she and Brian had built, frame by frame, post by post, on a travel account followed by people who knew her and people who wished they did. Her last post showed boats anchored in still, clear water. Days after that post, she was gone. According to Brian, the night of April 4th started simply. The two of them left Hope Town on an 8-foot dinghy, heading back to the Soulmate anchored nearby. The water turned rough. Lynette fell overboard. She was holding the boat keys, which Brian says shut off the engine the moment she went in. He says he tried to reach her. He says the currents were too strong. He says he paddled for hours in the dark before finally reaching shore near Marsh Harbor. The Bahamas launched a search. The U.S. Coast Guard joined. For days, crews covered the water and the shoreline. Only a flotation device was ever found. Lynette Hooker has not been recovered. There is a woman who has spent more than 2 decades being brought in, when no one else can find the truth. She holds dual master's degrees, one in psychology, one in behavior, credibility analysis, and communication. Her deception detection training is approved for continuing legal education in more than 30 states. She has trained federal judges, FBI agents, Homeland Security personnel, and Department of Defense investigators. She has been certified in the facial action coding system, developed by psychologist Paul Ekman, one of the most rigorous behavioral science frameworks in the world. She invented the only patented AI-based emotion recognition software designed specifically for legal professionals. She has consulted on the cases of Casey Anthony, Jeffrey Epstein, Elizabeth Holmes, and Brian Koberger. Her name is Susan Constantine. When true crime interviewer Matt Johnson brought her the Brian Hooker interview footage, she did not guess, and she did not speculate. She ran him through her method, channel by channel, word by word, and what she found began not with his most damaging line, but with the very first thing any trained analyst looks for: the baseline. Before Susan Constantine could identify what was wrong, she needed to know what normal looked like for Brian Hooker. She found it in a recorded phone call. In the days after Lynette vanished, Brian called his friend Blaine Stevenson. Stevenson recorded the conversation. CBS News later verified its contents. On that call, Brian gave the longest, most detailed account he has ever offered of what happened on the water that night. It is the single recording against which every other interview can be measured. Susan Constantine measured it. What she described was a voice almost completely flat. No rise, no natural drop, no involuntary break of the kind that happens when a person describes the loss of someone they love. The vocal delivery, she said, was disconnected from the content in a way that she has learned not to dismiss. Then she looked at the structure of the story itself. In a truthful account, a person tends to distribute their memory roughly evenly. Some setup, the event itself, The aftermath. Brian's account was heavy on everything surrounding the event. He described the waves, the wind speed, the life jackets they usually wore, the flotation cushion he says he threw toward her. But the moment his wife entered the water, the single most traumatic event in the account, was over in a single phrase. She bounced. 2 words for the moment that should have taken everything from him. Susan Constantine noted it. Once she had the baseline, she turned to Brian's word choices. Across his recorded interviews and phone calls, she flagged a specific cluster of linguistic patterns. The first was minimizing language. Words like basically, just, and kind of. These are hedging terms. They soften a statement without changing it. They leave a door open to revision later. A person telling the truth tends to be precise because the truth is fixed. A person constructing a story tends to be imprecise because they need flexibility. The second was a repeated default to the number 3. 3-foot waves, 3 of this, 3 of that. In her research, this pattern, the automatic selection of 3 as a round number under pressure, is associated with invented detail rather than recalled detail. A person remembering tends to say exactly what they saw. A person inventing tends to approximate. Taken alone, none of these patterns would be enough. Susan Constantine said so herself. But in deception analysis, a single flag means nothing. A cluster means everything. She called Brian's account deception indicated. Once she moved from the audio record to the on-camera interviews, the analysis shifted. The first thing she caught was something visible, once it has been pointed out to you. When Brian sat in front of a camera and spoke about his love for Lynette, about their 25 years together, about what she meant to him, his head moved. Not dramatically. A small, almost imperceptible side-to-side motion. The kind of motion a person makes when they disagree. Except the words coming out of his mouth were declarations of love. Susan Constantine calls this a face and head anomaly, the body leaking what the mouth is working to conceal. In her framework, the body is the more reliable communicator. It does not rehearse. It does not prepare. It responds. Brian's body in that moment was responding to something different than what his voice was saying. There was a second moment in the on-camera interviews that Susan Constantine flagged, and this one was quieter but heavier. A reporter asked Brian directly, had the police asked him whether he had hurt his wife. Brian answered that he had never harmed Lynette. Hurt, harm, 2 words, 1 swap. Susan Constantine has seen this pattern before, specifically in cases involving domestic situations. She calls it a category shift. The person being asked changes the verb, and in doing so, answers a different question than the one they were given. Hurt is a wide word. It includes pushes, grabs, threats, a hand around a throat. It covers the kind of conflict Lynette's own daughter described. Harm is narrower. It is legal language. It is the language of formal denial. It is easier to say because, in the speaker's own internal logic, it feels more precise and therefore more defensible. The interviewer asked about hurt. Brian answered about harm. Susan Constantine did not call that an accident. The next thing she examined was the emotional displays. There were several moments in Brian's post-release interviews where his voice appeared to break, where his face shifted towards something that looked, on the surface, like grief. The most discussed of these was the moment he said on camera that he did not think he had ever been apart from Lynette this long in 25 years. His voice changed. His expression shifted. To a casual observer, it read as a man barely holding himself together. To Susan Constantine, it read as something different. She described what she saw as a performing cry. The features that accompany real grief were not present. Real sadness pulls the inner corners of the eyebrows upward and together, creating the distinctive lines between them that are almost impossible to fake voluntarily. There were no tears. There was no chin dimpling. There was no natural rise, peak, and fall that real emotion follows. What she saw instead was a stretched mouth, raised eyebrows, the expression of someone attempting to persuade rather than someone feeling, an emotion that arrived and departed almost instantly, almost always interrupted by a cough. She stopped at that detail and made a comparison that will be familiar to anyone who followed the Murdaugh trial. Alex Murdaugh did the same thing. During his interviews and on the witness stand, Murdaugh would begin to cry, then cough, then return to composed calm, almost on command. It was a pattern that became one of the most analyzed behavioral sequences in recent true crime coverage. Susan Constantine looked at Brian Hooker's footage and said the pattern was the same. Not similar. The same pattern, wearing a different face. Now we reach the moment, she said, gave her everything she needed. A reporter asked Brian what it had been like to be in custody, while the search for his wife went on without him. He said it was hell. He said he was still in it. And then, without being asked, he added something he did not need to add. I don't have a wife. 5 words. Spoken calmly, almost as an aside. And for anyone half listening, they sound like a man broken by circumstance, a man whose wife is missing, a man who no longer has the life he used to have. But Susan Constantine was not half listening. A husband who, in the same interview, had said he still believed Lynette could be alive, that people had survived in open Bahamian water for days, even weeks, does not refer to his wife in the past tense. He says he misses his wife. He says he is trying to find his wife. He does not say he does not have one. Not before a body has been recovered, not before anyone has stopped searching. Brian Hooker placed his wife in the past, in the shape of a single unremarkable sentence in the middle of an interview about something else. He closed the door on her. Susan Constantine said that one line told her something no attorney's statement could cover. Brian was not talking like a man who was still hopping. He was talking like a man who already knew. Before we continue, I want to ask you something directly. Lynette Hooker has been missing since April 4th. Her daughter is still fighting for answers. The investigation is still open, and this channel is committed to staying on this case until there is nothing left to follow. If you believe Lynette deserves answers, if you believe that a woman who gave up everything to sail the world with the man she loved deserves to have her story told, please like this video and subscribe so you do not miss a single update. And drop a comment below. Do you believe Brian's slip was accidental, or do you think he let something real come through? I read every one. Susan Constantine's analysis does not exist in isolation. It sits alongside a set of physical facts that have never been fully explained. A bartender who served the couple that same evening, identified only as Ken, went on record saying that the 4-mile route Brian described paddling, which Brian himself said took him 8 to 10 hours, does not add up to that duration. Not even drifting, not even in rough conditions. A telecom source reported to Fox News Digital that Brian's cell service along that same route was intermittent in a way that raises questions about the timeline he provided to police. The paddleboard's items that could have carried him faster, or at minimum helped him stay afloat, were reportedly still strapped to the yacht when searchers arrived. And Lynette's own daughter, Carly Aylesworth, has said publicly that her mother never drove the boat, that Lynette was not the one who handled the engine, which raises an obvious question about why she would have been holding the ignition lanyard at all. No one has explained any of this. Brian's attorney, Terrell Butler, has stated consistently and clearly that her client categorically and unequivocally denies any wrongdoing. She has said there is no evidence because there is nothing to find. She has said he is cooperating and that he is heartbroken. Those statements are part of the record. So is the footage Susan Constantine reviewed. So are the 5 words. What Brian Hooker presented on camera was a picture of devotion. 25 years of marriage, a life built together at sea, a man destroyed by loss. What Lynette's family described was something that didn't match that picture at a single point. A marriage with highs and with very dark lows. Private messages Lynette sent to a fellow sailor in early 2024, obtained by CBS News, showed her writing that she and Brian had decided to call it quits, that it was real bad, that she could not be out there with him. A month later, she went back. Her daughter has said Lynette was planning to leave again. Carly Aylesworth has spoken about a history of physical confrontation. She told Fox News that there was history of Brian choking her mother, that the threat of being thrown overboard had been spoken aloud before. None of that is a charge. None of that has been proven in a courtroom. But none of it has been disproven either. And the woman who could speak to any of it, the only person in the world who knew what that marriage looked like from the inside, is the one who has not been found. Brian Hooker has said publicly, repeatedly, and on camera that he believes Lynette could still be out there, that people survive in open water, that he has not given up. In the same breath, on the same camera, he told a reporter he did not have a wife. Those 2 statements cannot belong to the same man. One of them is searching. The other has already finished. Susan Constantine looked at the footage and concluded that only one of those men is telling the truth. As of today, Lynette Hooker has not been found. Brian Hooker has not been charged. He returned to the United States after his release from Bahamian custody, his attorney citing his ill mother as the reason. The Royal Bahamas Police Commissioner has confirmed that Brian remains a suspect. His attorney has acknowledged that under Bahamian law, he could be rearrested as the investigation continues to develop. The U.S. Coast Guard's criminal investigation is running in parallel. They have already interviewed Carly Aylesworth directly. They are not finished. Carly is not finished either. She visited the soulmate. She walked the boat. She retrieved a necklace that belonged to her mother and wore it during an interview because it was the closest she could get to her. She said it felt almost eerie. She said she is not ready to accept that her mother is gone. And somewhere in all of this, in the flat voice on the phone call, the head that shook when the mouth said love, the word that swapped for a safer word, the tears that never came, and the 5 words that slipped out before anyone could stop them, is a question that has not been answered. If Brian Hooker already knew his wife was gone, how did he know? No body has been recovered. No charges have been filed. But the words are still there, recorded, preserved, waiting for a courtroom that may or may not come. And so is Carly. And so are we. When something breaks in this case, you will hear it here first, with the facts and nothing but the facts. Subscribe so you are there when it does. Lynette Hooker deserves that much.